Valid. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Guild Chat. I'm your host, Ruby, and we're going to be talking about the new Raid Wing today. So let's jump right in and get started. I will let you guys introduce yourselves, since I hear that you worked on it, which is why I invited you, so I hope you did. So, Bobby?
I'm Bobby Stein. I'm a narrative lead at ArenaNet, and I worked with this wonderful team on the story.
All of them.
All two of us.
All
And a
both
bunch of
you.
the invisible people who are
Yeah.
over on the side.
I'm Crystal Reed, and I'm a lead designer on Guild Wars 2.
I'm Byron Miller. I'm also a designer on Guild Wars 2. Worked on the raid.
You did.
I did do that.
Are you going to introduce them?
Oh,
or-
and these are my pool noodles. We'll talk about why they're important later, but
That is not at all why they're important.
it's challenging group content right there. She's not going to beat me up later, and that's how I win.
Well, I'm feeling a little bit challenged, so there's
I'm his
that.
boss.
Yeah. She's my boss.
We'll talk about this later.
Yeah.
This is going to go well for you.
My
is
quarterly.
Probably.
is
Quarterly
how I'm
review
feeling.
coming up.
So, speaking of sassing people, let's just kind of run through in order of gameplay, because I really want to talk about Glenna, because she's so much fun, because she's kind of a jerk, and you look so pleased with her already.
I am very pleased with Glenna. I like.
Let's talk
I
about
like
why she's awesome.
Pretty much everything about her. So Glenna was sort of originally
The vendor.
the vendor
Yeah.
NPC in the first raid wing, and
She didn't have a name either.
she
She was
didn't
just
even- yeah,
like
she was just a
generic
Priory scholar,
scholar.
or
God,
something
God, no
like
wonder
that.
she's so cranky.
Well, yeah. I mean, her life was pretty rough there in the beginning, but one of the things that we ended up doing was we made her the vendor, right? And we tied the vendor to the mastery, which was the
Lay riffs.
lay riffs. And so players and testers found a way to get up there while we were developing. And so someone said, like, well, maybe we should try to fix that problem. And I think Charlie
Yeah.
Charlie put a conversation option on her. And it was like, oh, I'm glad you guys finally got up here. Now go away and don't come back and talk to me until you have this mastery. And that sort of sparked a lot of fun interactions with Glenna. And we sort of over time, she sort of became the way that we talk to each other in the raids team and sort of the
No, we always talk to each other
Well,
that way.
that's true.
She didn't start that.
That's true. She became a
more of a
vessel
reflection
for
She was
that.
the
Yeah.
she was the voice of the devs within. It was a little meta.
Yeah, I mean, I think once we decided we wanted to have more of a constant character, and I guess that didn't really come into play until, well into development of the second wing. But, since raids are more about players and their group, there's not a lot of opportunity to have friendly conversations with people. So if there's anything we needed players to know, we'd put it on Glenna, and then it just became a really fun character where we could, where it felt appropriate, just have her kind of sass around with the players. So
Yeah.
in the third raid, she starts teasing the players about hey, way to flip that lever, good job.
Good job pushing a
And
button.
the players whistle at her, and she's like, "I'm not your puppy."
Oh gosh,
It's
that's
a little,
right.
little testy.
Yeah.
So she's just fun. I think we all kind of like having that constant character in there to kind of for the player to bounce off.
Yeah, it actually got to a point where some of our testers,
Yes.
some of our testers did a little bit of a pseudo role play where they both play Asura characters, and so they had this or during raid 3 they would fight over who was going to call Glenna, and they were sort of like this sort of romance, this weird
Yeah.
romance love triangle. And so for Raid Wing 4, outside of the raid door, there's a little Asura that I put there, and I made sure it was a male Asura, and I gave him a conversation that was a little bit more friendly about Glenna. He refers to her in a sort of more colloquial way, and then I told the testers that that was Glenna's husband. And so as some of the NPCs come out of the raid wing doors and go and they either repair their gear or they buy stuff from the merchant.
Yeah.
When one of those testers' characters comes out, he walks past and then he pauses and he turns around and he goes "Arrgh!" at the NPC and then continues on his way as just a little
That's fantastic.
subtle joke in there.
That's
So,
awesome.
So when they saw their NPC, did they recognize him
Yeah.
right away?
Oh, yeah.
And-
Yeah.
Well, we asked for their
Okay.
their armor sets,
Okay.
and so we made it
Yeah.
So they
composites
already
of them.
knew.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, our characters are there.
Yeah.
Some of the other designers' characters are there. Some of the testers' characters are there, and it's just sort of a fun way to have a little bit of liveliness like that. It gives movement and motion to the aerodrome, and it
Yeah.
sort of reinforces that that's a living place. So.
Well, I'm glad that we got the character model after you in game. I mean,
Yeah. Well, there's
We
there
needed
are
that.
Several.
dozens.
Several.
Miller.
we really needed to address that lack. So,
Mm-hmm.
you
Well,
know.
I'm all right with it.
Well, it keeps upgrading. You know, it started with Knuckles, who apparently looks like Byron, and he got upgraded to homeless Byron.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that.
Are you the reason we have beards in the game?
I wish I was the reason. That would be an incredible honor, but no, beards predate me by hundreds of thousands of years, as far as I can tell.
You could have just said yes. I mean, nobody really would have argued.
I don't want to take
You're
credit
the
where
only one
credit
with
is due.
weapons.
It's true.
So-
I'm the only one with weapons. I can defend whatever I say.
Badly, but
This
yes.
is true. This is dangerous. Why did we allow him to bring these props?
I don't have a good answer. There's, you know what? We can talk about that because Glenna's not very fighty. She's just kind of fun and sassy. But we go through, so we get to Cairn and his platform.
Karen is sort of like in the sort of the grand vision of what the raid instance is. It's a prison, right? And so we did a bit of a tongue-in-cheek, like let's take some of the established like tropes of a prison, like the guard outside in the front, and then
Yeah.
like the Mersat statue was originally called the corrections officer, and the warden,
Right.
Samurag, is the warden, and then you've got your high-value prisoner at the end, and so yeah, Karen is just there as sort of a sentinel, as someone who sort of observes and allows people to pass if they are, acceptable.
He's the receptionist.
Yeah, the receptionist, exactly.
He takes your name.
Takes your name and knocks you up a platform, and
Gives you your visitor badge.
Yeah, he's the greeter. He takes you to your
As
table and gives you your
receptionists do.
breadsticks.
yeah. So I don't know. Can we click the button? Does the
No,
thing?
Yeah,
it's
let's-
not. No, the button isn't for.
The button's not for this,
video.
but we can probably see because while he was in development,
Yeah.
his little weapon wasn't.
So he's got
so
a
great.
skill called orbital sweep, and when we were playing it, I had to hook up a temp effect. And this is there's a GIF on screen of this temp effect, and so like we were waiting for effects to come online, and so I was like, well, we need something that communicates like big thing that hits you and knocks you back. We might as well make it a club of some sort. And we had this temp, this prototype in there, and so I put it in, and some of our testers started referring it to as pool noodle.
It looks
The
exactly.
pool noodle
It's
attack.
exactly what it is.
And so actually it's sort of funny because I had these at my desk for 3 or 4 years now since I worked on Living World Season 2, and we used to take our frustration out when we were like really stressed out. A couple of designers and I would just like beat each other with these for like 2 or 3 straight minutes and then be done with it. So it was it was relevant.
Our team just sometimes goes and plays darts, and I feel like we've been missing an opportunity.
I feel like darts seem like significantly more dangerous.
Not on each other.
Oh,
No. Oh gosh, no.
all right. Well,
No.
On the dartboards.
to each
Yeah,
their
that's-
own.
Yeah,
That's what
there's
the
a
lawn darts
dartboard.
are for.
Yeah. The lawn darts. Those things are big. Have you
I
seen
know.
lawn darts? They're like, oh
Do
man.
they even sell those anymore? I don't think they do.
I
They're like
don't
illegal.
know.
I'm
I think someone
horrified
had
by the
gotten
thought of-
seriously hurt.
Wow.
With it.
All right, so that was his temp effect. was
Yeah,
the big pool noodle,
it's a big
and I
pool
love
noodle,
it.
and so like they were throwing ideas around, like, well, for the summertime, you should put some water wings on them and a little like rubber ducky
Oh my gosh.
thing, and I don't know, fun
Do it.
stuff like
Someone do it. Somebody make this
that.
happen.
Somebody make it happen.
I don't care if it's you, or I don't care if it's
Talk to Franco.
player art. Oh, Franco.
He'll be on board.
Franco's on
Franco
board.
loves fun. He'll be on board.
Franco, yes, Franco, please. This needs to happen. All right. Hey, Byron, can you remind me to tell Franco?
Oh yeah, I can also remind you your laptop's back there, by
Where?
the way.
Okay, thank
behind
you.
Mhm. You're welcome.
I really appreciate that. All right, so Karen, he's our first guy. He's the receptionist, and I am going to call him that until the end of time.
Okay.
Knocks
That's
you
what
off
his
the
title
platform.
should have been.
Yeah. Why didn't? Yeah.
Bobby.
Remember?
Receptionist of the penitent.
Receptionist of the penitent.
I like it. All right, so he has a new name now. So he's the first guy you encounter, and we had talked about a couple of players have managed to solo this guy. They are more hardcore than I am ever going to be in my entire life.
Yeah, I think the first
And-
one clocked in at like 4 hours.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how long did you say this took? Bobby's like, dear God, what?
Wow.
Yeah. 4 hours for the first. I think it was a druid, a Kondi healing druid. I want to say
Wow.
spent 4 hours doing it, and then someone else. I didn't check too much into the next one, but I think about an hour after that. It was like an hour attempt. I mean, like I'm suitably impressed. I don't think I have the patience to try to do that for 4 hours.
4
but-
hours of what?
Did-
Whittling him
Dodging.
down?
So wait,
Dodging
they
and-
were live
Dodging.
the whole time for
Yeah.
4 hours?
Yeah.
Oh my.
Mhm.
Wow, that's nuts.
All right, I am super impressed. You have my admiration too.
Yeah, there's someone who's working on a Veil Guardian solo kill
Yeah.
for a while,
Oh, yeah.
and that was really impressive because I mean, that encounter will mess up your day if you're not like really on the ball
Yeah.
to react to some of the abilities, like especially the distributed magic. They can get through it because they use the store and they just make themselves invulnerable to the damage. But the last I had heard, they were around. I think they might have gotten through the first transition, but then it kind of goes a little bit crazy from there.
That is a project. That is. How long have they been on this?
I don't know if they're still working on it. The Reddit post was a little while ago, a couple months ago.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that one's like a way less forgiving fight. Like Veil
Yes.
Guardian is not as forgiving as Jade Construct is. That's for sure.
All right,
Or
but still,
Karen.
4 hours. Working on that guy for 4 hours is incredibly impressive, and then just the sheer bullheadedness required to
Yeah.
sit there for 4 hours.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it owes to the fact that that Karen is the ramp of difficulty and like allowances for mistakes is a lot smoother and lower for Karen than it is for some of our other intro bosses,
Like Veil Guardian.
like Veil Guardian, for example. And so I'm not surprised if you execute well in that fight as a solo player. You can obviously push the boundaries of that encounter quite a bit, and that's actually kind of cool. I mean, we've had some things in the past like Gorseval's no updrafts where you push the boss so hard that you end up like dodging mechanics
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
entirely. And like there was a debate a while back, like, is this okay? And I think at some point it was fine. I mean, like it's impressive to see where our players started versus where they are now, and I think that's something that hit us pretty hard when we released this raid. Is like some of our expectations were blown away by what our players have become over the last, what is it, 2 years, a year for raids?
Year and a half ish
Yeah.
or so.
I don't know. This is a question I would ask you.
Year and 4
Yeah.
months.
They've
Trying to remember
learned
offhand.
quite a great deal, and
Yeah.
about their professions, about each other's, like, and the synergies there, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that's really cool.
Yeah, it is. All right, so we get past Cairn,
Mm-hmm.
manage not to get swept off the platform by the pool noodle. And then the miasma clears, and you head up toward the actual prison. Is it Death Row?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Death Row. And it looks pretty harmless, but there's a lot going on right there at the beginning where there's not really any fighting happening. But if you kind of explore around, and this is where I think you were talking to me a little bit about ambient storytelling.
The story rooms. So I know early on when we were like at the very beginning of the raid stuff, I know you and Jason talked a lot about, like, I think, the thing we're always trying to figure out is like what's a good balance of story and gameplay, because raids by their definition are supposed to be the hardest content in the game and kind of serve a segment of our player base, right?
Right.
So we want to have a story in there, but we want to make sure that it's a good fit for what we're doing and it's not slowing you down from doing things. So
Right.
these rooms allow us to kind of put story in there, and people can either breeze right through it and solve the puzzle and go on, or they can, take their time.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of a fun thing, and that's actually the first part where, as soon as you enter, I know Crystal set up a whole bunch of this stuff, and it was kind of going crazy because I think originally, like, especially in our heads when we were first talking about like how it would flow, it's like, oh, there's this big area and you go in and you'll find all these things and your character will kind of make comments about it. And I think in our heads, at least initially, it sounded like there would be a lot more space for things to happen, but in reality, you hit all these things all at once, and it's very easy for like everybody in the party to start talking. But like that's the moment where, as soon as you come in, depending on what your character's race is, you can start making observations about the fact that it's a prison and about the different, corpses that you find and other things. And that's also the kind of puzzle room idea that I know you folks like put a lot of thought into at the very beginning. It was like, okay, if we're I think in some of the earlier raids where it was more of a straight shot through from encounter to encounter or event to event. Well, why don't you guys talk about this a little bit? Just maybe a little bit about the design differences, about how you wanted to make these
Yeah, the
things
puzzle
in between
was
the
an interesting
fights.
change of pace.
So I think a little bit of it was trying to fill in the gaps in between the encounters and what would realistically still be there. Like we had to do I mean, we spent a lot of time talking about how even the final prisoner was still there. And so it didn't really make sense to just have, like, create an army of prisoners and then these creatures would be spawned, you know, throughout the prison and to, like, you know, delay you from getting there. But we wanted to put something. Like, we didn't want it to just be like you kill the boss, you run 100 feet, and then there's another boss, and then you run 100 feet, and there's another boss. So, and that's why we went with the direction of, like, more environment interactables.
Yeah, I think that there was. We were also pretty ambitious. I think this time we decided early on that we wanted to do 2 bosses each rather than 3. And I think that in past releases, some of the events leading up to bosses, and some of the like the gauntlet in Spirit Vale sort of served as these mini encounters that, while not as development intensive, say, as a raid boss, still was a challenge in and of itself to pace the encounter. And I think in this case we said, well, we have 4 encounters, let's let them stand out as these moments, and then in between, while we don't want players to be overwhelmed and exhausted by just going from fight to fight, we can provide an opportunity for things to slow down so that the story can get picked up on, and so that players can take a breather, and, you know, if they need to go to the bathroom in their 4-hour raid run or whatever, they can do that. And it's not like they need to be critical for progression from point A to point B and always be there for that. And I think that in large part, like, the puzzles are simple. It's like, you know, grab a shovel, dig a bunch, right? It still served a really good point for that purpose. And I also wanted to talk about, we'll talk about this with the prisoner at the end, but if you go into the prison area and you're, I think it's a human.
If you do the human, I think it's commoner story.
Commoner story, right?
Yeah.
When you go to prison, yeah. You actually make comments. You'll actually say something like, "It says like I've been here before."
Yeah, it's like I never thought I'd go back to prison.
Yeah.
But this one's.
But here we are.
Yeah, so it's just and that was the other cool thing is just the team. Like, a lot of times that I think we've done this in the past few raids where we'll kind of get together and be like, okay, like I'll have a list of things that, like, narratively need to happen and kind of where I think it should go or whatever. But then we all kind of get in a room. We're like, hey, what are some cool things that, like, what kind? Basically, I'm like, what voice do you guys need to support the things that you want to do, right? So it's anything from mechanics to the environmental stuff to just some really cool ideas. And I think trying to make your character feel like you've been in this world a long time and recognizing the things you've done. So everything from, like, I rolled a thief and I can actually, roll past, I've actually got a use here. I'm going to pick the lock. Or, I went to prison in my character's personal story or whatever. So yeah, we just came up with a really big list, and everybody on the team just kind of wrote a bunch of things on the board, like, hey, we should do this, we should do that.
It's been fun seeing more and more of that in the game as we progress. Those little bits of recognition for what you've done as a player in the past, things that your players are saying, and you get that little, oh yeah, that's that's a thing that happened. And I had that on the PvE side right after we released content in Cauticus's Manor. You come around the corner and there's this wall that's just been blown up, and one of the NPCs says something about, gosh, this wall is blown up. I don't.
They still haven't fixed
who the
it
heck
or whatever.
did that?
Yeah.
And your character's like, oh yeah, sorry about that. So and the thief thing and we can talk about when we get there, but realizing, oh yeah, this is here because of me and what I am playing and what I have done in the past.
Yeah.
And it's a good feeling to have that recognized.
Yeah.
So
actually, it's funny too. I think it wasn't it was either Death Row or the chess room was originally going to be a maze at one point in the design.
Yeah.
I think it was chess room.
Yeah, it was. We called him the corrections officer, and then it got turned into chess because it was originally going to be a giant maze, and it was going to be more of like the event style encounters we've done, like Spirit Woods or Siege to the Keep, and we were having difficulty just nailing down exactly what we wanted to do, and so we're like, let's just do a boss. We'll just do a boss, and so we had a mechanic, and we just called it like Statue Blast, because it was like kind of based off that scene from Neverending Story when, like, Atreyu, like, he comes to like the two like marble statues and their eyes are like slowly opening. He's got to like dodge through, and there's like all the bodies around. It was supposed to be like the statues in these alcoves, and then they would shoot like a blast across a line, and if you were standing there, you would just die. And so we were sitting down with all the artists, and we were talking over like some of the mechanics that we had planned for the boss. We kept talking about the statue blast, and so I had drawn it out on a whiteboard as a grid. And I was like showing how like it would, you know, do these like pattern attacks, would do like a row and then a column and a row and a column, then it would increase in you know, we would add more rows and columns as the boss got lower in health, so it would become more difficult to deal with. One of the artists is like, oh, so it's like chess. And I was like, no, it's not like chess at all. This is no, it's terrible. And so we left the meeting.
That's an awful
like
idea. Why would you say that?
So we left the meeting with like kind of an idea of what we were going to do. And then we were still struggling along on the design. So Byron and I sat down, we were talking about it again. And we were talking about the statues, and again, I drew the grid. And Byron's like, so it's like chess. I was like, no, shut up, it's not chess.
Nothing like it.
It's not chess at all. And then we went back to my desk, and I was like, yeah, what if it's like chess? What if... I'm like, okay, so that gave us like a really good starting point. Like, hey, what are the rules of chess? Like, chess has a bunch of rules. I mean, there's no way we were going to have time to script all the actual chess rules in, so we just picked
actual chess
rules. So, you know, we played a little fast and loose with the rules.
That's okay.
And like I even learned, like I don't play chess, so I learned like a bunch of rules. Like I didn't know that when like a pawn makes it to the other side of the board, they get upgraded to like a knight or a rook or a bishop or whatever. So we kept that in. So like there are these little soldiers, and they represent the pawns, and then they like kind of like slide across the board, and then when they move on to like tiles, they claim them, and then when they get to the other side, they always upgrade. And so that's what like our pre-established rules. That's where like this always happens, it always does this, it always turns into this, and it always resets, like, and all these intervals, like they're just like these like constant rules throughout the encounter, like these well, they're not called statue blasts anymore. They're just spike attacks.
Now they are.
Now they are. And it's like, you know, those always fire like every X length of time. And then every time the boss hits like a new health threshold, you know, they upgrade and then they turn into like this new pattern. And so it turned into a somewhat chess encounter.
Isn't
It's like chess.
isn't the script for the timings on that thing like 120
Yeah, no,
entries
it's-
the
it's-
same thing?
No,
my
it is. The script for that was horrible because we had set it up one way, and then when we changed the art asset, it ended up being like these longer kind of rectangular art assets. But when you which was fine in the first phase when there's only one, but when they started to overlap, it looked terrible. So we had to like, instead of it being just like it was like 8 assets, it would turn into like 16. So then everything had to get kind of rebuilt. And then after I did it, I was like, man, I bet you there's totally an easier way to do this. And then Byron was like, why did you do it that way? We could have done it this way instead. I'm like, it's already done. It works.
Leave me alone.
It's fine.
Oh,
so yeah, no, the script for that is just like a ton of script actions, just saying like, turn these things on, turn them off, turn them on, turn them off, over and over and over again.
Separated
On a loop.
separated by like wait X seconds.
Yeah, wait, do it again.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet. Hold on.
No,
Now.
it was a terrible time.
It sounds like fun.
Yeah,
does
if
not
you
sound
like
like
really
fun.
tedious, like monotonous work, sure.
Yeah.
Fun.
Yes. So, actually, that brings me to something else that I want to talk about before we leave the prison area. That a seemingly simple thing, and this is, I want to talk about it a little bit because it's kind of funny, but also a game design thing where something seemingly simple turns really complicated. And that would be your rats.
Oh god, those are the best rats ever.
The best rats in the whole world.
Well, like I
Let's talk about
was
Crystal's
responsible for a
rats.
lot of the kind of ambient stuff that, you know, filled the prison when when there were no bosses, and it was like, well, what lives in the prison if there are no prisoners, and it's all like kind of falling apart. Well, there's probably just a bunch of rats and spiders and bugs and stuff that have gotten in here. So I had like spawned some rats, and I was like, man, these guys should like. They've probably been in here for a while and haven't seen any contact with like anything, because they're avoiding the warden, and, obviously.
they have
and,
a point.
Yeah.
And so when you approach them, they would probably run away. I mean, like, that's what the rats on my property do. They run away. And so I had spawned them in. I was like, okay, well, I'll just fear them when players get near. But they couldn't be feared because they were they were just like a standard like ambient creature in our game. So I was like, these these stupid rats can't be feared. I'm like, hey, well, I made a new copy of them. That I just made it so that you could fear them. But then when I made, when you feared them, I put these giant like skull bangs on all top of them, and so they were just like running around with like effects everywhere. I'm like, oh, that's
Because
horrible.
there's like 7 of them together. So.
Yeah, so then I had to like, like clone out a version of like our fear condition and then like remove all the effect portion from it. And then it worked. And I was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever built. And so I just put rats everywhere all over the whole prison. And then even when we were like feedbacking stuff and like we were doing like our final reviews getting close to ship, I was like, guys, we have not put enough scurrying rats in this like corridor. Make a note for me to add more.
Because
And
you have
so-
no idea what I went through to make this work.
I know, I made it work. I was I was so happy with those silly rats. Put them everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you should be, because it's one of those things where you always hear, well, why don't you just do this? Because it seems super simple.
Because they have a buff on them that
And then
prevents
it's
them from being
thing
feared.
after thing after
That's
thing
why
after
we just
thing
do
that
it.
turns into a ridiculously complicated thing. So
Yeah.
congratulations on your rats, because they are wonderful, wonderful
Yes.
rats.
Mission accomplished.
There should be more. There should be a carpet of rats.
I'm just gonna
Mm,
make like a
that's
common script
disgusting.
for other
Yes.
designers to use in the future. Like, hey, anyone who wants to use screwing rats in their content, we've got you covered.
We're going to find these everywhere, aren't we?
Maybe, I don't know.
You're gonna be fun burrowing chickens everywhere.
I forgot about those until just now. Look at how happy you are.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, so we leave the rats behind,
Yes.
unwillingly, because they're wonderful.
No, they ran away from us. They're leaving us behind.
Yeah.
It's very true. You're not wrong. And we get to this door where you have
That
to
door.
go around and
That door.
find.
Oh,
no, you
yeah.
can just open
Cue the
that without it being
screenshot.
complicated. Okay, so you get to this door and you have to go around and find things to open it. I don't know. I did it easy because I was in there on a thief.
On a thief,
Or
yeah. Or you can
just
just bring a
play a
thief.
thief.
It was like, my time is now.
Yeah.
And then I went back in the back of the group again because nobody loves me. But if you don't have a thief, what are they? Were just like little blue glowy balls. And
Oh, the little schmooze or whatever they were for a while.
all right, they're schmooze now.
They're
I don't know. I don't know.
Um,
I don't know
that's
what we
what
were
they
calling
are.
them.
Thank you, Ryder.
the eye is there, and part of the fight, and I think this is a mechanic we use in the last boss as
Yeah.
well. Gives you a temporary gift of true sight.
No, we
essentially.
didn't.
No, we didn't do that.
That was cut.
That was cut.
Yeah.
We did change that right before.
Surprise!
That we can talk about that when we get there and why I cut it.
Okay, perfect. Wait, I thought the Saul thing was that.
Yeah.
No. All right. Well.
It's not there anymore.
Good work, team.
But the door thing is.
Yes, the door thing is there.
And so the eye grants you this ability to see something you wouldn't normally be able to see, and it sort of exposes this rubble that has some essence on it. And you collect the essence, you bring it to the door. Once the door is sufficiently essenced, it opens. Or you could be a thief,
Really
and since
scented.
thieves are tricky and can pick locks, they just like bypass the whole thing. They're like, all right, cool, let's just move on now because I'm here and I'm awesome.
That's right.
That's right.
Yay. Who was it that was super happy about that? Did you say that was Z that was...
yeah,
Yeah.
Mike went and play. Well, we told him, we're like, we put a surprise for your thief in there. Just because in our dev raid, we don't let him play in his thief. We make him play as Chronomancer.
No, but the reason why we don't let him play his thief is because he has the Dreamer, and all he does is spam horses everywhere,
All right.
and so he's
that's
not allowed to
on,
use
on
it.
purpose.
On purpose.
Yeah.
Just like Ryan and the
Ryan
Quip.
and the Quip. Ugh.
Okay,
So-
both of you stop it. That's not okay.
So we're like, we put a surprise in there for you. I mean, we didn't put it in there specifically for him, but we knew he would enjoy it. And then he didn't know where it was, but they got to a point, and he walks up to the door. He's like, "What?" And he's like, "This is the greatest moment."
Did he get really excited and like start firing his dreamer over and over?
Probably.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, just right into the air.
Yeah, stop that.
That's
Don't.
annoying his entire raid.
Okay, yeah. I understand why you won't let him play... Yeah, make him play as Chronomancer. He deserves it.
Yeah. I mean, I need alacrity, and thieves don't give me alacrity, so we don't let him play as thief.
But now Sean can return to his Revenant.
Yeah, it's true. Sean can use his Revenant now. Provide me with some alacrity.
I'm unhappy about that. That's not nice. All right, so you get through the door quickly because you have a thief, and they're awesome. And now we've got Samurag,
Yeah.
who has been... There's been a little bit of foreshadowing because we have all of like these gigantic spears through the prison. And your
Yeah.
character's looking at them going, well, this is totally going to end well.
And it roars a couple of times.
Yeah,
Yeah, there are a
in,
couple
like,
of times where you
areas.
get some screen shakings from
That was
Roar.
not at all terrifying.
Yeah. No, it's cool. Yeah. If you're standing in certain spots, you'll hear him roar, and then and if you do talk to Glenna in between, it's not mandatory, but if you do, she kind of comments about like, I think we're getting actually a little closer to things now. This might not be a good idea.
Yeah, I had that moment of, you know what? Maybe I don't want to raid.
Well, and actually the funny thing too, and I've seen some people comment about this online, or online, is just they're like, oh, Samurag, somebody's been reading Tolkien too much. The funny thing is, it is totally not a Tolkien
Oh,
thing.
right.
It's
let's
not a
talk
Tolkien
about
name
that.
at all. So it's
sounds like
actually
it, but
a
it
simple
isn't.
explanation.
Yeah.
The creature artist who modeled Samurag is named Samantha Rogers, and as a
you
tribute to her
crushed
awesome
the name
work,
together, and
we
it's
slammed
Sam
we slammed the names together and made Samurag.
And I think we were in the area upstairs. You're like, got this great idea for the name, Samurag.
That wasn't me. That was Byron.
It
Was
me.
it? Was it
Yeah.
you?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. And you were like, all right, whatever, just don't hurt yourself.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, so Samurag is sort of a again back to the sort of theme of like tongue-in-cheek look at a prison, and while it doesn't at all seem tongue-in-cheek because this is a really dark raid wing and a really like somber tone, Samurag as the warden seems to fit this bill of like a prisoner with special privileges or seeming special privileges because it can be used to intimidate other prisoners
Like
or
the
use
kingpin.
yeah, like almost like a kingpin, if you will. And
The
so,
kingpin.
Okay, the kingpin.
Not just
Just saying.
Not just a, the.
The.
And so the story is sort of like, and I don't want to spoil too much of it, but whoever was in this prison before, they booked X number of years ago, and they left Samurag there, sort of to its own devices, right? If you were to just if all the prison guards were to leave but keep the prison locked, then a hierarchy would be established, and Samurag is at the top of that hierarchy. And so as you walk through, you see these dead prisoners. Some of them are impaled. You see more and more impaled prisoners, and you're sort of like, okay, like this is unusual, even for the unusualness
Right.
of where we are. What's going on? And the sort of payoff here is Samurag, left to its own devices, has hunted down and killed all the remaining prisoners. Well, all but one remaining prisoner, right? And so like you walk into that room, it's a sort of a giant inverted pin cushion of spears. And actually during the fight, if Samurag knocks you up into the air and you land in
You're
the
super
spears, you get
done.
impaled.
Yeah.
And there's a really wonderful audio effect that plays along. Like I know that in the heat of battle it's crazy, but you should go and get yourself killed by this so you can listen to the audio effect, because the audio guys were super proud. Actually, Drew came by and he's like, I have something for you. And I was like, this is great. Whenever Drew says, I
That is
have
the
something
best
for
thing.
you.
You know it's about to
like,
get so good.
I was in the parking garage like a couple months ago, and like in the morning just like coming into work, and he's in the like opening his trunk of his car, pulling out like a car windshield, and I'm like, audio guys, he's got this huge grin on his face like, I'm gonna make some stuff with this.
Yeah, when
But he-
Drew has something that's really weird and looks excited,
Yeah.
I want to know.
Exactly.
I'll come see you in an hour.
Yeah,
So
he brought.
he comes by my desk and he hands me this like 4 or 5 foot piece of rebar, like this huge, like it's like this big, and it's like when you mount a frame in concrete
Yeah,
for
yeah,
like
yeah.
a wall or something, you put a bunch of these down.
Right, yeah.
He just gives me one of these, like, we were making noises for your boss, so I wanted you to have this, and so now I have this big weapon essentially.
And it's not weird.
No, it's not weird. Like whatever, audio gifts.
Thanks, Drew.
Yeah, thanks, Drew. So yeah, Samurag, big dude, impales you and knocks you into spears, and
Is it like squishy?
it's sort of like a metal meeting metal, then going past metal into flesh sound. Like
All right.
it's exactly what it is, and they nailed it. So
As they do.
as they do. Yeah. So Samurag is the sort of the warden. Also, there was sort of a hope in my mind at some point where like people would be like, final boss, great, this is it, we're done, and then realize
Sucker.
that after that is something even more like sort of mind blowing.
And actually, I don't
Yeah.
know,
So this is
it-
some
yeah.
concept.
Yeah, no, one thing that I thought was really neat too is, and I don't remember how many different concepts there were, but definitely when we had talked about, this boss and the one after it having kind of some visual similarities so that they looked as if they could come from the same place. And we never
Mhm.
really go into the specifics about, where they're exactly from and, did somebody make them or are they their own thing and did they work for, we leave a lot of that up to people to interpret. But we definitely wanted to make it look like they came, this boss and the last boss kind of come from the same part of town, let's just say. So yeah, just when we look at some of those others, you'll notice like the horns and things like that. There's a lot of similarity. But anyway,
There's a really cool reason for that. Can't wait to get to that because it's probably my favorite part of the Raid Wing is what the last boss represents.
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
Later on, tell me what that part of town is so I can stay far away from
Yeah.
it, by the way. We were talking about him throwing you into the spikes. Can we talk a little bit about the development on his combat tells? Because I was interested in that and how, the area of effect thing for a spear would be super tiny. So we did that
right. So
differently.
one of the things that I think, and I would argue this is a success for this raid because I think we went into it trying to do this was we tried to build a suite of effects for mechanical tells in that is boss specific. So Cairn has a lot of cosmic parallaxing, right? And so a lot of the effects are built with that in mind. And even the ground tells we tried to build into just avoiding the like, this is a green circle and this is an orange circle and like react to those rather than react to something that looks foreboding or doesn't. Like the safe zones all have like a bluish, greenish tint to them that is starkly different from the reds and purples that are the danger zone. The boss is red and purple as a way of connecting the dangerous parts of his attacks. The Mersat statue encounter was like one of the best, I would argue, sort of synthesis of prop effects, audio and design assets working together to provide really solid in-world mechanical storytelling and encounter telling. And so I was really sort of thrilled by that. And Samurag is another attempt at that. I don't think it was as successful as the Mersat Overseer, but we tried to do something where Samurag's a big character. Moves slower, can move fast in bursts, but for the most part, those spears are heavy. He sort of leans back, and you know that he's going to be doing something with it. When it comes from the side, you know it's a big sweep, and it should probably hit you if you're standing in. And so, like, there's an overhead smash. And so, like, connecting Samurag to the physicalness of that creature and the environment itself allowed us to not do the thing where we throw an orange circle on the ground, with, of course, the exception of one of the mechanics, which is a spear falling from the sky. You're, like, the shadow of a spear falling from the sky is going to be like this big. It's not going to tell you that it's dangerous, so we did end up using some of that stuff there, but really the impact and the after effect all tied together communicate the danger more so than the orange circle. So I think we did a lot with building our encounter mechanics and our encounter tells specific to each boss in a certain way.
It was good work on that.
I think so.
Yeah. All right. Last boss for real.
For real.
Oh, for real.
Yeah. We finished faking them out, and now we get to Demos and the final prisoner.
Yeah, so if you haven't played the Raid Wing, if you
So
haven't
many
read
spoilers.
if you haven't read the internet
Spoiler.
at all, put your eye muffs on and your ear muffs because we're gonna spoil some stuff.
We're going to do all the spoilers. Yeah, so if you haven't had internet access and you're just now back after, weeks,
yeah.
all the spoilers.
So I do want to preface this by saying that this raid almost didn't get approved.
Almost didn't get approved.
we had a hard time
And
Wow, I
convincing
didn't know
people
that.
to do
We had to lobby pretty hard just to
Mhm.
even get like the whole concept and like story approved, and without it being in the raid, it wouldn't have been in the game at all.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm glad we actually fought for this one.
I think
Yeah.
it's important to keep that in mind too. I
Yeah.
think that's like there are a lot of stories we do want to tell, and I think that there are places where that makes sense, and there are places where it doesn't, and I think this is one of the places where it made sense to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we also knew that we wanted, like, and I think you had mentioned this before, Crystal, just the fact that whereas the first 3 raids were kind of this continuous story that resolved after 3 things and led into something, we could kind of do what we wanted here. So
Yeah.
I think the team really tried to take advantage of, okay, if we're going to tell a story from start to finish, even though it's kind of, reaching a little bit back into Guild Wars lore, we really wanted to kind of treat it almost as a character study. Like, people are only going to really get a chance to spend any time with this character here in the raid. So,
Or in Guild Wars 1.
or in Guild Wars 1. But, like, you'll really only, like, in Guild Wars 1, you could actually play as him for a
Right.
mission, and the the ending of that actually kind of leads into like the story of this raid. But like we figured we only had this space to actually do it. So everything from the encounters and the ambient dialogue to the things that you see and do, like all is meant to kind of tell you a bit about him as a character and kind of humanize him in a way that I think people probably weren't expecting to see in something like a raid. You know, I think people, rightly so, look at the raids as the most difficult, challenging group content that we do in the game. But we want to really push boundaries from everything from the gameplay and the art to the story. So I don't know, just I think that allowed us to kind of go places that we wouldn't normally have gone in our game. So it was just a really cool opportunity for every discipline to really kind of push in a different direction.
Yeah.
It was intimidating too.
Sure.
Bringing back a character from Guild Wars 1 that, up until this point we just assumed was dead. We didn't really know what happened. We really worked hard to make sure that it was telling a story that players would be happy with. And one of the biggest shifts we had, other than determining who the prisoner was going to be, was the fact that you were going to kill the prisoner originally.
Yeah.
Like in the original design, you're going to go beat him up.
Yeah.
And you're going to kill him.
We can also probably stop being cagey. We gave them the spoiler warning.
Yes.
It's Saul
You can say
D'Alessio.
Saul
And I'm just going to say that
So-
so that we're all on the same page
I
now.
was waiting for someone else to say it. We decided we were going to put Saul D'Alessio in the raid. Some of the first things we started doing was okay, who's Saul D'Alessio? Let's go read up on this character. And we were actually really fortunate enough that the designer who did the original bonus mission pack, Lindsay Murdoch, is still here. And so we're like, hey, Lindsay, what do you know about? What do you know about Saul D'Alessio? She's like, let me tell you all about Saul. And so we were actually able to go back and play through the bonus mission pack.
Yeah, the story research on this was really well done.
Yeah, and I think it was her idea originally, when we decided to make this from, because originally the raid was going to be more of a tomb style thing, and then it turned into a prison, and then we're like, well, is there a prisoner here? And then it kind of went off, and I think it was her suggestion we could put Saul. We're like, we can't do that, can we? And so we liked the idea.
Yes,
we
you
went
can.
with
Yeah.
it. Yes, we can.
Turns out we can.
Turns out we can.
I was actually looking for the whiteboard from when we had that meeting about, okay, what are we actually doing?
Yeah.
Right? And I know you had been playing, Rise of the Tomb Raider?
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
oh yeah, awesome, fantastic game. And I remember you were sharing concept art, and we were
Yeah,
so.
that's where the tomb concept came from.
Oh, it was
Or-
awesome. Well, and I know. So there was the maze room, and then we were talking about doing all these, the statues. Could it be like the clay army statues
Oh,
coming
yeah.
around? And so many different ideas, and then it was a list of, okay, we could do this, or we could do this, or we could do this, and we just kept one by one cutting out the other ideas, and we're like, you know what, we should just really do the Saul story.
Yeah, I think Lindsay threw it up on the board, and there was a moment where everyone was silent, right? And then
This is it.
and we were all thinking the same thing, which is something that we now throw around quite a bit, which is there. You've made it when a bunch of developers go into a room and they're like, man, what should we do for this raid release? Or they're the story for this raid release, and someone's like, we should do something that makes Wooden Potatoes soil himself, because that's a polite way of saying what we actually said. But so there are times where we go into a meeting room where we're pitching something, and we come up with an idea that is so thrilling both to us and we know will be thrilling to the players that look for certain things in our
To you
game
as
who
developers
partic-
and players.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so you get the Frisian bumps, right? And the hair stands up on the back
Yep.
of your neck sometimes. And I think that was one of those moments where someone threw that out there, and everyone just knew that it was going to
This
be
is
that.
it.
They just had to make peace with it. And so yeah, I mean it's fun moments like that where you nail down something and it just changes and everyone runs with it. And I think that some of our concept art is a really good look at how our concept artists, our character artists, our effects artists all really run with the ideas that we end up all generating together.
Yeah, and Art got really, really, really into this release, more so than I think I've ever interacted with Art in my entire career here. They were so enthusiastic about everything from the concept art to all the modeling and then the final effects.
Yeah, this was a true team effort. I
yeah.
mean, everything
Yeah.
really came together.
Yeah, so like we had pitched the idea that like once we decided not to kill Saul but to free him, and we went with the story that he actually feels really bad for all the stuff he did, and then he just gets kind of carted away, and he's like kind of stuck here dealing with this stuff for like 250
time,
years.
yeah.
So we kept throwing around the term burden, that he was like
Yep.
being burdened by like his guilty conscience and the weight of all his sin, and then so like we said that to our concept artist, and then Sveta came back and gave us this awesome piece of concept art. Cue it, Mark, please. There we go. And so like she came back and showed us this. We're like, whoa,
Yeah.
this is so cool. So we're like, this is what you're gonna see. Like, do this. So then we sent this to Dana, our prop artist, and then so he like just almost completely recreated this as like this giant set piece that sits in the room.
You can actually get it as a reward as well. You can actually
Yeah.
carry around a fragment of Saul's burden on your back
You
as
can-
sort of an idea that you are sharing in his story. And you can only get it after you beat him, you beat that encounter, and so like just stuff like that. It all came together in this sort of full loop where we went from concept to implementation, like all the way back around to this. What is essentially a concept, right? You're
Yeah.
carrying around
Yeah.
his burden.
Well, and I know, and I know we can't show it, but I know, Crystal, you had gone through a whole bunch of different iterations about what the fight was going to be.
Yeah.
And, I find it, like, during fights especially, narratively, we want to kind of step back and not put too much into it because we want the fight to shine. And it's also just really hard to, like, pay attention to, like, really heavy story beats during an encounter, especially if you're fighting over and over again, right? So one of the things I wanted to make sure is that whatever Crystal wanted to do gameplay-wise,
Do what I want.
Make sure Crystal gets what she wants.
that's right. We give Crystal what she wants, and then she's happy.
None of us get hurt.
That was
But then make sure that whatever happens, like, it thematically works with everything we've been doing, right? So it's like, oh, if you're fighting these things, could it be, manifestations of his guilt? And we kind of went around a lot trying to figure out what you were fighting, when you were fighting it, what the eye's role in it was, and all, and that was at a time where I had just watched this movie that I was really into when I was a lot younger. It's this movie Jacob's Ladder, right? And
Oh
it's,
man.
Yeah.
it's really kind of heady, and the whole idea, it's you're pretty much, spoiler for people who haven't seen it, it's almost like you're living in the last moments of this person as they're dying.
Statute of limitations on that movie has absolutely
Yeah,
expired.
it's only
fine.
like 30 years old, so yeah. So at any rate, and we don't need to get too into it, but it was just kind of like the idea of not necessarily telling the same kind of story, but making you feel like you're living moments in somebody's really like tortured history,
Yeah.
and just trying to show that in ways that we could do in a game, and definitely I think Crystal, when she was doing the encounter design of it, bopping back and forth between the platform and then going into this other realm, and then you're kind of confronting the things that have been plaguing him for a long time. It was just like a really cool way to mix the two things together to where
Yeah.
hopefully it
Yeah.
So I want to talk actually a little bit about this fight as sort of a manifestation of what he like. I want to pose this question, I think, to our players and to the people who've been discussing this from a storytelling perspective. Is that we have this like idea of what the Demos is, right? The question I want to pose to you guys for discussion really is like, is Demos real? Because I think that there's a lot of if you walk down either of the paths of he's real or he's not, there's a really, really rich, cool discussion that can be had, and is open, I think, in my mind, to debate.
Yeah, I think it's definitely interesting to leave a lot of that open to discussion, because a lot of the things that I've seen players discuss online between the mechanics and the environment and the things that like Saul and Glenna say, or like when you go into the, we call it like the sensory room, but it's like the chamber of the guilty. Just all that stuff, when you add it up, it's like what's real and what's inside Saul's head. Like when you actually, right after you kill the warden, and you kind of look over the platform where the warden could actually, the whole idea was the warden could actually look over and keep an eye on Saul while he's in solitary confinement. Like, what is he seeing? And the first thing Saul says, because he can't even really see you as you're coming in, he just says, if you come to crawl inside my head, there's no more room.
Yeah.
Who's trying to kind of get that idea of this guy he's been in here so long, he doesn't know what's real and what
Yeah.
and what's
Yeah.
in his mind.
Yeah, and I think that like even going back to what you were saying earlier about Samurag's concept art and like sort of linking the two of those together, like Demos does have a lot of representation, like image representation and visual representation of things, of parts of Saul and of parts of Saul's environment in his immediacy and parts of Saul's environment and history. We could probably take a look at some of the concept for Demos now, because there are some parts of it that that Sveta did, and there's some parts that Chris did. Chris Bennett?
Yes.
Chris Bennett's the creature artist who we have a Chris Barrett and a Chris Bennett. I always get them.
Oh,
anyway,
gosh.
And there's
yeah.
also a Trevor Bennett. So
Oh no! Don't make it worse.
I know.
so
Who's the squad leader?
yeah, it was
yeah,
that's right,
yeah,
Squad Leader
same.
Bennett.
So Sveta brought in this concept of him, like we have the burden. You saw the candles on the concept art for Warden on
yeah.
his back. You have the candles here. You have the horns from the Warden, as well as sort of being part of that representation. The chains.
He's got the Eye of Janthier carved into his
Yeah.
chest because he's crazy.
Incredibly
This is
creepy.
emo.
Yeah, we've got
And some more concept art playing with the ideas of the horns and the sort of the torture aspect and the horror aspect of what we did. And actually, I don't know if we don't think we have a screenshot in game of Demos, but the coolest is like my favorite part of this raid release is there's this he's got these white arms, right? That that coat him, and like they move around and they grab at his face and they like act as these sort of weird otherworldly but in truth that is a white mantle, right? Like it is a manifestation, right? It is a manifestation. That's all Chris just hey, I did this thing, what do you think? And it was another one of those moments where like a couple seconds go by where you're like, oh, I see what happened here. And it wasn't like the pun. Who cares about the pun? The fact of the matter is that that's a part of the representation of Saul's torment that manifests like physically and really horrifically in the model. I just that aspect right there is like the one in this raid release that does it for me.
Yeah.
It's just so cool.
It is really, really well done. You know what? While we're looking at art, we do have the storyboard video that you shared.
Oh, yeah.
And this seems like a good place to share that
Yeah.
because I want to take a minute and let's watch that.
So this is after you've beat the encounter. This is the sort of how we tie together
Right.
the end.
Yeah, and this is the first version of it. So it was probably version 5 or 6 of the script, and then Chelsea on the
Shooter.
cinematics team, Chelsea Shooter and Greg Becken I think he did the voice, and she did all the first drawings just to say, hey, if we did it like this, here's how it would kind of look. So
So let's throw this in with concept art.
It's all my fault. They murdered my men, but they spared me and dragged me to this infernal prison to break my resolve. The Eye kept me alive, used my guilt to break me down, forced me to be their puppet, but I never broke. I've been trapped here, tormented by my own demons, paralyzed by the guilt of selling out humanity ever since. You freed my body from its shackles. Now I can finally die.
That is.
a downer. So depressing.
I didn't want to say it like that, but it's your guys' story, so you're allowed. But there is, and that's like Byron said. I mean, you know, the pun is kind of funny and all, but there is a lot more going on there than.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on in his story, and once you finally beat him, he's not. Oh no, you killed me, and I'm really unhappy about this.
I think the
He's-
final line got changed a little. He doesn't just say
yeah.
like, and now I can die.
Yeah.
I died.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the final version works
Byron
better
doing
than,
more
than
VO.
Yeah, the final
earlier
VO line
script.
was like,
Yeah.
now I'm free.
Now I'm free. Yeah. It was, yeah, and the original version too was a bit longer. It was like probably 7 or 8 lines, and it just kind of went on. It overstayed its welcome, and I think having less dialogue and more of the imagery kind of telling you the story, I think works better. So
Who did the storyboard?
that was
Yeah.
Chelsea.
Okay.
Yep.
I wanted to make sure that somebody got credit, and I couldn't remember who you said
Yeah.
did it.
Well, and she whipped it up in like a day or two.
Okay, that's ridiculous.
It was crazy because we, I think, had a meeting talking about, hey, here's kind of what we want to do. And, I just blasted out a really rough draft of like, here are some ideas for the script, totally not final or whatever. And yeah, the very next day.
Yeah, that actually that cinematic actually starts almost exactly where the Guild Wars 1 ending cinematic.
Oh, yeah, we wanted to
ends.
match that
Yeah.
shot.
Yeah, so there's that shot where the Mersat have their hands on his shoulder,
his
they pushed
shoulders.
him down, and like you can go to that video, and like that's like where it fades to black, like right after that, and we sort of begin the ending cinematic right there
Yeah,
as
it's almost
well.
like that's where his story kind of left off before, and this is kind of where it takes off now. And it was kind of the idea of that's when kind of the burden hit him.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where his guilt really comes
Yeah.
into play. And this, as soon as they're like, all right, we're taking you out of here, and he realizes just how badly he's kind of screwed up, and then he's had to kind of mull all that over in his head for a long time.
That bookending of where his story left off and picked up is one of the things that we were talking about earlier that I was so impressed by. All of the research and reading and gameplay that you guys did on, okay, what happened back then with the bonus mission pack
Oh, the skills.
and
Oh,
and his
like
skills and all of that
Yeah,
reading.
Crystal
was so
Crystal
well
could
done.
talk about that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So like a lot of what we did when we were trying to figure out like what the boss would do is what is Saul also doing during this. So like we'd like gone back and looked at like all the skills he had in Guild Wars 1, and we're like, okay, well he threw down banners, and I mean some of them got a little different. They weren't like 1-to-1 ratios because his skills in Guild Wars 1 were very much so like more Guild Wars 1 themed than Guild Wars 2 themed.
Yeah.
And we've taken some liberties with, like, he had some signets, and signets worked a little differently in Guild Wars 1 than they do in Guild Wars 2. So, like, we took a few, like, liberties with it. We tried to, like, match them up as best as possible. But he throws down banners and he heals players when you stand in them. The boss has, like, this big ability called Mind Crush, but he creates a protective ward that you can stand in there. And then he's got a buff he puts on players called like Form Up in Advance, which is a skill he had in Guild Wars 1 as well, and it makes you run faster so you can get into this thing and be protected by it.
Yeah, it was really, really nice touch.
Yeah.
I just noticed your shirt, by the way.
Right? I brought
Yeah.
my Cairn
Yeah.
shirt today. I'm glad that you pointed that out. I was hoping
You're
that someone
waiting.
would say something about
the
it.
parallax.
Yeah, it's
He's
like
been waiting
am I
this
real? Is
entire
it, my whole
time.
body is like dusk. or
I
whatever
wondered why
or
you've been sitting over there going,
not dusk, eternity. I don't know, whatever. I don't have-
Twilight.
Twilight. There we go.
it's a legendary shirt.
I have Australaria, which
It
is the same effect except on an axe.
Byron's shirt is nice.
It is. It's very nice.
That's what we should have called the show. Is Byron's shirt is
We
nice.
could talk more about it if you want.
It's okay.
Your computer, by the way, it's
There it is.
It's over
Is it
there.
missing
We're
my
about
laptop?
40 minutes too late on that
whatever.
one.
Forget it. Now I'm mad. All right. So
We talk
you
about
had
the room?
mentioned
Can we
yes,
talk about
we
the
could
room?
talk about the room. That's right. I was like, so you had mentioned his guilt, and is there any
Uh,
place we could maybe delve into that and learn more?
So yeah, the story rooms at the end, right? There's the torture area, and then there's the dark, scary room. And,
Such a happy place.
well, and it's funny because like we, had talked about like, okay, how can we? It was really important, I think, that we wanted to try and show more of the story rather than just have Glenn or somebody explain a bunch of it, right? So, we knew about the different guilts that he should be wrestling with, and we could have done. You walk into a room, there's tableaus of him posed and these things happening, but we felt it would be really neat to try something different, and that was kind of where the sensory idea came in. And we had a meeting
Yeah.
actually. We got a bunch of people in a room. And the audio team, especially, we were looking to them for ideas, and it was funny too because it was like, okay, how are the different ways we can do it? And then Byron got up on the board and kind of drew a big square to represent the room, and then drew these overlapping circles. And we're like, hey, what if when you come in, you're really confused, and you're basically in these 4 different zones all at once, and all of his guilt is kind of coming in, and that's sort of what the cinematic represents, right? Where he's sitting there clutching his head, and
Yeah.
that's where he's dealing with all his guilt. But if you kind of start to move around the space, the story is, you can get the story to be told to you in whatever order you want, but at least it'll isolate what his guilt is, and you can actually learn about those moments in his life where it was kind of like his downward spiral, and then when the Mersat kind of found him and sort of gave him a second chance, he was almost like born again in a way, right? Like his life had purpose. but he realized, I think, a little too late that he kind of allied with people who really had no interest in his redemption or in humanity itself. They just really were looking to, out for their own interests.
Yeah, in general, no interest in him, right? Like,
Yeah.
they saved his life, but really, it was sort of an empty victory for him in the end, right? They built him up to be this thing that he actually ended up not being, and he knew that. And I think that that break right there, where you realize that you've been played, but to such a degree, that would ruin me.
Yeah, I mean, and it's kind of funny too, because where the bonus mission pack ends, it's almost like the only people who really knew what happened were the people who were there and lived. He was one of them, and he's whisked away. And everybody else kind of hears the story about, oh, he died a hero, and the Char killed him or whatever, but that's not what happened. So he's off, isolated, thinking that everybody will realize he basically made a deal with devils. And meanwhile everybody else thinks he's some sort of hero that he isn't. So it's no matter whose side you actually no matter where what your version of the truth is, it's kind of crappy.
It's still not,
Yeah, and
It's
I
not
think,
this clean, pretty ending. And
right, and Glenna talks about this, and especially if you're a Char or a human.
Oh,
but
yeah.
in the end, but she says that it's probably not best to bring his body to the Queen, because they would basically use him as this propaganda
here's
tool.
the head of our enemy kind of thing.
But so would the White Mantle, and they've lost it.
yeah,
Right. So
yeah, they're not in a great place right now.
Glenna decides to treat him with the respect that she feels he deserves, which is to be interred on Crichton soil in a quiet way that doesn't bring any more attention to him, because I don't think, if he were looking on, right, he would want that attention.
totally. They're just like, you know what, let the guy rest. Just give him a decent burial. And it was kind of like, just leave him be.
Yeah.
Let it lie, and this doesn't need to be brought, because the player is always, the hero of Crichton. You're always killing dragons and doing all this heroic stuff, but this is kind of your moment to do a little bit something off to the side and a little bit under the radar, to where it's not about people coming up to you on the street being like, oh, you're so wonderful. It's more just like, this one's just between you and me.
Yeah, it's not neat and clean. It's not pretty, but
But it is.
this is the best ending you can give it.
Yeah.
But it is done.
And I think,
Yeah.
when we weigh the ideas of, do you fight Saul because he's too far gone, or do you, liberate him and then he's alive, or do you, and I think when we weighed all our options, we were just like, you know what, this can end here. Let's just say what we need to say and kind of show him for who he was, and then put it to rest.
Yeah. I like that. I don't know if this was intentional or not. I like that Glenn is the one to say, this is probably how it should be done, because Asura are very pragmatic, and a lot of times that comes across as mercenary, or,
Yeah.
like, oh, my assistant got blown up, but whatever. But she's cutting to the chase here, and it works really, really well that particular race is the one to say this. And I have no idea if that was on purpose or if it's just, Glenn is here, she can be the one to do it, but it works.
Well, it would have been harder for us to say, to do that in the player's voice, right?
Yeah,
if
that's
you were a
certainly
Char, there's no way that you're going to
Okay,
be like,
yeah.
we should.
It's not super charitable.
Yeah, it's not very. Yeah, it's
No.
there, especially for what he did and where he positioned himself in the history of Char-human
Yeah.
relations. A Char probably wouldn't say that. Human would be less likely to say that. Sylvari they have no concept of
Sylvari
what's
are
going
like,
on here.
what is happening?
Yeah, so it made sense to be anybody but the player, and I think the added bonus is what you said, which is a race typically known for their pragmatism and their sort of Spockish logic
Yes.
side of things,
Yeah.
would actually have a bit of a more nuance to it.
Yeah. I think that was kind of something that we wanted to do tonally here, was just, if it's about doing a character study or showing a little bit of the shades of gray, giving Glenna the opportunity to kind of show that Asura aren't all just sarcastic little jerks.
Right.
Yeah, she's acting on behalf of the Priory. Yes, she's
A
obviously
sarcastic little
interested.
jerk.
Yeah, I mean,
Sometimes.
she can be a sarcastic little
In
jerk.
the best way.
But, when it comes down to it, when you're talking about, somebody's life or their legacy, you give it a little bit of that respect that it deserves.
Yeah. So there are a couple more things I want to go through. We're going to take a break in a few minutes and then come back and take some questions. So if you have questions about this Raid Wing, go ahead and start throwing them in chat and we will answer a few of them. Before we get to that break, do you guys want to talk a little bit about the challenge modes and how those work and why you put those in there?
So yeah, we had some achievements in the previous raid releases that you know, some of them were difficult. I think we could have made some of them a little bit more difficult. Like I think one of the ones that stands out a lot is there's one called Last Cannon in the Sabbatha encounter, and it requires you to like basically leave a cannon. Like once it goes active, you just leave it active for the entire encounter. So it kind of like, you know, cuts off a quarter of your play space. And it, you know, adds an additional like layer of difficulty. And so we wanted to try and push those a little bit more, like these, you know, one-time achievements. And in most cases, they have like lots of new mechanics. The bosses have a little bit more health. They do more damage. But really, it was just kind of the next step for what we've already been doing. And do you have anything else on that?
Well, I mean, like I like what you were saying about how we've like the challenge modes in this raid release are sort of like what we've settled on as a result of trying a bunch of different things in a bunch of different raid wings. Like there are a bunch of like just you did the achievement, you get your achievement point things in Wing 1, and then there are a couple in Wing 2, like Slippery Slubbling, which is significantly more difficult than. Say, for example, the Matthias one, which is like just do the fight without any food buffs on, right? And then like there was some that we tried for Keep Construct, and it was just sort of like where we found our footing for doing what we wanted to do. And I think that they serve a very nice purpose for providing something for players to chase after a little bit, but not something that they feel compelled to chase after a lot.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I'm going to leave this up to you because we had talked about this before. If you feel like it's long enough, if it's been long enough to talk about the specifics of the one in the chess room, I'm sorry, I feel vaguely guilty for calling it chess at this point.
It's chess.
It's chess. It's the chess boss.
But it's not.
Talking about what again?
About the specifics about some of the challenge modes. I think that was that you that really liked that one?
The chess challenge mode.
I mean, we all like the chess challenge mode,
but that's on. I think that's you because you were thrilled by what that ended up doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to spoil it for people who may not have done it, that's totally fine.
So the chess challenge mode was. I love Sudoku, and I love I really like logic puzzles because it's very easy for me to like say like, of course this is the missing number that goes in the corner. So there's actually like an entire like Sudoku board that's like built in the background. For the challenge mode. And so what it was is every 30 seconds, it just randomly gives you, like, it assigns you one of 4 safe zones. And the safe zones each have their own pattern, and they never overlap. Like, there is never a safe zone that is repeated within a row or column, just like Sudoku with the numbers. And that's so that, like, in the last phase, when you have, like, the spears coming out, and at various times, there are basically only 4 tiles available at any time to stand in. It has to be set up so that, you know, all 4 of those corners are a safe zone for you so that you don't get hit by spears. And it was the first time some of the testers were playing it. It was really, really confusing, and it was really fun watching players when they played it live and watching like the gears turn and just like, okay, everyone stand on the blue square. I'm like, I stood where you told me to stand and I died. I'm like, well, were you on the blue square? I don't know. I was on top of you. That wasn't my blue square though. Like, what do you mean it wasn't your blue square? We all saw the blue square, and then that wasn't the blue square. Mine was over there, and just like the gears kind of turning, like. Oh, it's per player. Yeah. And when like everything clicked and they figured out the puzzle, like that was really satisfying and rewarding to watch.
Yeah, it feels good watching that learning curve happen.
Yeah.
All right, those are fun in kind of an infuriating way.
Yes.
But it does make it more satisfying when eventually you stop being murdered and not with no idea why.
Yeah.
So. All right, before we take a break, do you guys want to go through the rest of the concept? I think there are a few pieces that we haven't gotten to see yet, and I really want to show those off.
So we have to cycle through. We didn't really put these in the right order. So this is the concept art, again, from Sveta for the Demon Realm. And
That went actually through a lot, right? Like we originally
Yeah.
wanted it
Yeah.
to be you go inside the burden that's on Saul's back, and there
Yeah.
was like you wanted to do this. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, going inside the burden was really hard to. It was really hard to like kind of message that you were actually like kind of shrunk down and inside that little thing on his back. So we went with this direction instead. We thought it was super dope. So Dana rocked out the prop for this, and then we used that for the Demon Realm. I'm gonna have to cycle through some stuff here because it's not in order.
We can see it again because it's
We'll see it again because it's awesome. We have the Warden. Here's another concept piece for the Demon. And so I think this is the one that has
That's
like a
terrifying.
few more hands. Like
Yeah.
there's some hands that are hanging out in his
Oh, and
his like horns.
yeah.
This had like some early concept of his like mace that he had. Caught our animator like really wanted him to animate him like swinging these huge maces around.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, sure, we'll not complain. We could make some cool attacks out of that. This is some more concept art that she threw together for the chess room. Like she literally made it is a chess room. Like we are not kidding when we call this the chess
It's
room
very true.
internally. But you know that gave Tammy, our map artist, a bunch of directions she could go in terms of what the room looks like. So aside from the fact that the concept art has very obvious chess pieces in it, the room is all pretty similar. Like we have all these like pillars and stuff around the outsides, and the top is all kind of like open with foliage that's all growing up around everything. I think that was the last thing. Oh no, JK. There's one more. There's more chess stuff. So yeah, just more concepting stuff on like the possible like the little base for they're called Jade Scouts to go on, and like some more of the architecture around the little arches.
I actually goofed when it came to Glenna talk. So we have notes and things that are spread around that kind of tell you, oh, this is a game that they, the guards may have had the prisoners engage in either for their own amusement or whatever. But when Glenna talks about it, she's like, oh, yeah, over in the chess room. I was like, because we call it like the recreation sector. We never give the game an
did she
actual
call
name.
it that?
Did that go-
She says chess. I was like, and I just realized it after watching somebody's live stream. I'm like, oh, whoops.
No.
That's kind of funny though.
It is kind of
Like,
funny, but like there is no concept of chess in Tyria,
Yeah.
but she kind of says it, so I guess there is now.
It's a completely different game.
Totally.
Completely different. It has a board, but that's about it.
Yeah.
It's phonetically the same. We should make it spelled completely different. Like just put random letters in there.
XGHEZ.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
there you go.
There you
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
It's pronounced chess.
Yes, but none of those letters are in there.
It's all Q's. It's
Yes.
Like 5 Q's.
5 Qs.
All right, so we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will answer some questions. If you guys have any, you have a few seconds to put them in there, and we will start looking them over. We'll be right back.
His beard is a legendary weapon. Asura are actually polite to him. He always gets what he wants from the Mystic Forge. Tequatl waits for him to show up. The Norn sings songs about the songs that he sung. The pale tree grew just to give him shade. The Asura have a college which studies him. Dolyaks hurry to avoid wasting his time. His shadow is level 80. Tyria got world completion when he was born. He is the most interesting Norn Interior.
I like this.
All right,
the
and
most
that was-
interesting Norm in the world looks like my
It was-
character Axe.
It was
Mr.
Byron
Four
Fax.
Axes.
Byron Fax.
Yeah.
His beard is a legendary weapon.
You were so excited, and I didn't even realize this was Byron Fax. But yeah, all right, we have more facts that people want to know about. We have a lot of questions to answer, actually. First one, Mudramoth. Hey, Mudramoth. Is Demos a real demon, or is he supposed to represent Saul's demons, like the pride and greed ads that spawn?
I
Tell us.
think we had all pretty much agreed that it's best just to leave that one open to interpretation. I mean, it's, you play it as if it's real and it's there, but I think we kind of like the idea that there's kind of, you're on the edge of Tyria going into another realm, the Mists or wherever, and I don't know, and just the fact that there's so much going on in Saul's head, I think we'll just leave it up to people's
I
interpretation.
mean, we could turn the question around, like, what
do you
What do you
think?
think, right? Like, what would be the most satisfying thing for you? Because I think, like I said, it can go either way.
think it
I
works
have what
either way,
I have what
yeah.
I want it to be, but like, maybe someone else has a very compelling reason why it should or would want to be different.
Yeah, I mean, it's in some ways it's really meant to be a little bit ambiguous anyway.
That's
So.
fair. All right. How about I want to know if you're going to leave this one open to interpretation. Deathmore80 wants to know, what exactly is Samurag? What race is he, she, or it?
So all we say is that it's a demon.
Well, Samurag?
Did we say that?
Well, actually,
Bobby
we
just
probably
making it
have
up on the
not.
No,
fly.
we haven't said that.
No, we have
Good
said
job.
that well. So here's why I would go there, because the horns and other
Yeah.
features on it are very close to Demos. So
Okay.
I think there was a lot of discussion about, is it a creature from Tyria or is it a creature from the same place that Demos is from? Again, I think we specifically don't define it because actually there's no reason for the player or Glenna to actually know what the hell this thing is anyway.
That's actually brings me up to the point where we refer to and it is voiced that Samurag is a he, but I like to think in my mind, in my headcanon, right, that nobody actually knows.
Yeah.
They assume that
You
it's a
don't
male,
know.
but that Samurag's actually female. Like that's what I believe.
That was kind of a joke that we ran with a little bit, and we did some prototyping for some other stuff related to the raid, and that was kind of one of the things where, because I think even Glenna might even refer to it as being a male creature, but then I think we had tossed around the idea of, well, actually no, we found out it was female or whatever. But
Interesting sub fact about that. It's based on the Vinetooth animation rig.
oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh,
So-
really? Oh, I think I had asked you what rig that was. So
Mhm.
there we go. So now I'm picturing Vinetooth Fallon, and it fits with your headcanon.
Yeah. I apologize too. I know these might feel like non-answers to some people, but there's a reason why we presented it in a specific way that I think it actually potentially kind of kills a lot of the wonder about the raid by kind of definitively making up a reason as to what it exactly is. Because I think if we ever really needed to define what it was, then we would,
We would do it
write
the right
something.
way.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
would do
Do
it the
so.
right way rather than, arbitrarily going, oh, it's this, and then making something up.
Then it feels like you just had like a dart, and
Yeah, it's just I
There's
don't know.
that.
I don't think we not the way to do it.
all right, that's fair. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to call you Vizerios. I hope I got that right. How interesting was it bringing the Eye of Janther back with the additional lore and its capabilities to keep Saul and other prisoners alive?
It was mostly Bobby.
Scale of 1
I
to
mean,
10.
we just knew he was going to be in the raid.
Yeah.
And Glenna was going to be chasing it throughout, and it would appear to each of the bosses, and then slowly travel deeper and deeper into the prison, kind of giving you this like false sense of like you're chasing it, and it's just luring you towards your doom.
No big deal.
No big deal.
No big deal. Bobby.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we tried to do in this raid, and I think it's something that we've tried to do in a lot of them, is just kind of like a cold open. It's like you go into it and you're not really sure what to expect. I think we want people to explore, and for each encounter to kind of feel, there's that sense of discovery, like what's going to come up next, right? And the first thing that you find out is, okay, this portal opened up. We don't know where it goes. It's obviously in a place where a lot of magical craziness is going on, right? You get in there. Hey, I was looking around, and hey, wait till you see what I found, right? And okay, what is that? And really, it becomes the thing that motivates you to go deeper in, because you don't actually know what you're going to find at the end. You don't know who the prison. You don't even know it's a prison at first, right? So we want to constantly set up an expectation and then kind of subvert it or flip it on its head. So the whole idea is that she's really interested in this thing because she sees the eye there, but really, what becomes the interesting thing about it is who you discover at the very end of it. And
Yeah, seriously.
and the cool thing about the eye is not much was really shown or said in Guildworth lore about what it was anyway. It was involved in one mission, and in that mission it has a very mechanical purpose, but kind of lore-wise, if you take a step back at what the Mersat's motivation is and maybe what the eye could be doing, how that's all tied together, we felt it was a really interesting way that number one, even just having it there and not doing much other than kind of spying on you is a little creepy and unsettling. But giving it a reason, it's like, oh, this thing is actually kind of keeping things running. The thing that kind of is employing it, it's there on behalf of the Mersat. The Mersat haven't come back in, decades or hundreds of years, right? So it's just kind of on autopilot at this point.
Oh, gosh.
So the fact that it is keeping things running and doing these things like keeping prisoners alive. And it's also like, just because it can keep prisoners alive, it doesn't mean it will, because there's a lot of dead things there when you get there, right? Some people have starved, most of the people have been, skewered by Samurag, and just, it definitely can be kind of selective in what it's doing and how it's doing it, right? And then I think at the very end, when you pretty much take care of all of its employees, it's like, all right, peace out, I'm out of here. And then Saul has literally nothing keeping him alive. So I think it was just kind of a cool way to kind of tie that off too, because you're not going to catch this thing. It's not really interested in talking to you. And once you've pretty
That's an eye,
much
not a mouth.
screwed up its
Watches.
work shift, it's gonna go off and do something else. Where's it gone? What's it gonna do? That's not something that we can talk about. Have you seen the last of it, or will it resurface? Who knows? But as for what its role is in the prison, it's pretty much you kind of put it out of a job at this point.
Where does the eye go after it clocks out?
Yeah, exactly.
It's what I need to know.
Going home,
now.
cracking open a beer, and complaining about what a crappy day it
They
had.
killed all the big guy at the end. They killed him. Now what am I gonna do? You can't just bring those jobs back.
But it was it was really fun though. I think once, because Crystal was talking about in the final encounter, like, well, if this thing's just kind of hang out, can it fight? What could it do? And she had a lot of really great ideas about like how it could involve players in the fight, and that was kind of the whole idea, where it's like, the Eye of Janthier choosing you, because there was that whole concept of the chosen in Guild Wars 1, and so it's not a very good thing to be chosen.
No, I was just thinking, I don't want to be chosen, please.
And the fact that it's just doing these kind of nasty things, and just, I know in where it says like you have the gift of true sight, but then the description is you have been cursed with true sight. So it's sort of like a little bit of a joke. But when you go in, and did this mechanic make it in where you're actually?
No, there's another question about that later.
All right.
Actually, there's a question about that right now.
Segue.
So, Jim KG, what is your favorite mechanic that was cut from a boss? Bobby just gave spoilers to
Well,
his
so
answer.
While we're on the subject,
for me, it's actually not that. It was
yeah.
And what's one that you don't care about?
well, so the Veil Guardian was actually a completely different boss at one point in time, and it used this idea that essentially, like at a basic level, you could mix colors to make, like, you mix primary colors to make secondary colors.
Yeah.
And that was how, like, that was the puzzle you had to solve. Like, how do I turn red and blue into purple to, like, penetrate this purple thing, and bring down a shield and fight, like, a purple version of the Veil Guardian. It was terrible.
It was really terrible.
It was really horrible, and I'm
Oh,
so
no.
glad that Jason and I, back during development of Spirit Veil, like, we sat down. Like, it was kind of fun watching people play it internally the first time because it had a
This is where they would come together. And you
Yeah,
have to-
Yeah.
and if you crippled them, they'd get out of sync.
yeah. So
Thanks,
like the idea
Chris.
is like they move in unison. You kill one on top of the other. Kill one on top of
I
the other.
remember
They
this.
mix the colors. But if you like crippled or chilled
it
or
was so
immobilized one at all, it was horrible. And like, people gave us like kind of mixed feedback on it, and I was like, this is a really terrible boss. And then Jason and I were like, we're just gonna cut this whole boss. We just cut the whole thing and redid it because it was so. It was not a good boss at all. So I don't know if it was necessarily my favorite, but it was sort of it was the very first thing the Raids team ever built, and it was sort of like one of our favorite, I guess, memories of our development cycle. Just watching that thing, watching our first thing come alive, and then go, "This is terrible. Start over."
Well, thank you for not doing that live.
Yeah, for me, actually, there was a mechanic on Samurag that we ended up cutting for technical reasons, which was Samurag would put a curse or a poison on you of some sort, and it would stack, and it would constantly tick more damage and tick more damage in an area around you. And you actually had to select another player and use a special action button to give it to that player, resetting its stack count, but having it start over, and then you could not, if it was given back to you, your skill was on cooldown, so you couldn't give it to somebody else.
This is the
right?
worst game of hot potato
Well, it
ever.
was essentially like poisonous hot potato.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
it turns out you can't curse other players from yourself. We don't do that.
Thank you again for not doing that.
We're not cursing you.
So, I will let you answer.
No. So my just question was I know. Is it still does one player have the true sight and you can kind of see?
No.
Okay, that went away.
Bobby, there's a question. You should wait for the question.
Sorry.
You should calm down and wait
I
for the
should.
question.
I
That's
don't know what
totally
to
okay.
talk about at this point.
Actually, no, I will
So
let
confused.
you go ahead and tell us your favorite, but I will also tell Mark that I can't see the next question, and we're not going to answer anything unless he helps me out. So, what was yours? What was your favorite one that was cut?
That's a really good
Well,
question.
it's the same question, so
So
you can say like the pool noodle skill if you can't think of anything.
But we left that in. It's right here.
yeah, that wasn't cut. I'm trying to think.
No, we just brought it into real life, so it still counts.
Yeah, pass. I don't know.
Pass.
Wow.
I haven't-
Really?
I haven't been thinking about it. Sorry.
All right. Caesar Britannicus. Wow, that's not intimidating at all. You have to answer this very well, or something awful is
All
going to
right.
happen to you.
Challenge accepted.
How far along are you in completing one raid when you start the development of the next? I'm going to assume raid wing and not.
Yeah, so that varies a lot. We started working on both Salvation Pass and Stronghold of the Faithful before we even shipped Spirit Veil. Like, the idea was always that Jason and I tackled Spirit Veil together, and then we needed to like wrap up the story. We wanted to do it as quickly as we could, coming off of the release of Spirit Veil, and so like Spirit Veil shipped in November, and it was sometime around September where we started working on the other two, at least like working on the bosses and the design docs. So we started those really early. After I'd finished working on Salvation Pass, I began to start work for Bastion. And originally it was a different designer was going to work on the project with me, but that designer was like Teddy was already working on Stronghold with Jason, and they were still working, like it hadn't shipped yet. But Byron didn't have anything to do. He basically he wrapped up. He did like the Lion's Arch Aerodrome and the Special Forces training area, and so we're like, Byron, do you want to just come do this raid? So Byron jumped on, and we started that. But it had a lot of kind of some strange like delays in development. I actually took a month off of building any content in general. I taught like a giant boot camp for
that's
some
right.
new designers we had hired because we were like, how are we going to get them all trained up on the new tool set? I'm like, I'll just go teach them for a month and then I'll go back to doing raids. So there were some delays. There were some of those things happening. We're getting a little bit better at having like two teams that are just leapfrogging a little. So it really kind of varies a lot. There were design docs that were done for Bastion of the Penitent by the time Stronghold of the Faithful had shipped, but there wasn't a ton of actual like script development work at that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's, so just depending on what's going on and.
It really it
There-
varies. It depends.
There are always boss design docs that are done. Like
Yeah.
I think that's always a good like rule of thumb is that when we're in development and shipping one thing, there are things that we have like in the wings that we've been working on, almost always.
Okay, how about, let's see, Salisi. I'm just hoping for the best on some of these pronunciations. What was the true sight mechanic going
That's
to
what
be
you were
in the
talking
last fight that got cut?
I didn't know what you meant. I didn't know what you meant. Bobby, shut up. It's coming.
You
All right.
mentioned it was cut, and I may have missed it if you already explained it when talking about Demos.
So, what used to occur is during the Demos encounter, you periodically go up to the demon realm and you fight like various vices of Saul. One is a drunk, one's a thief, and one's a gambler. When we were designing the mechanic for the gambler, it's the gambler. Yes, it's a gambler. Sorry, I get the thief and the drunk and the gambler mixed up sometimes. So the gambler, he basically like splits himself off because like Saul was part of his like class profession, and Guild Wars 1 was a mesmer. I'm like, what is the most mesmery thing you can do? Summon a bunch of illusions. So he summons illusions. We have to kill the right one to like complete the puzzle faster and get him to come back out. And originally, like the Eye of Janthier would give one player the gift of true sight, and then that player had to basically like call target on the correct illusion. Like the correct illusion looked different, and it worked. Like it wasn't always like super clear what was happening, but it worked and players figured it out. And then one day I was changing some of his weapon skins around, and I accidentally changed it on just like the real illusion, but not all the fake ones. So the real illusion ended up with a different weapon set than the other.
Okay.
The others and all the testers were like, "Oh man, this puzzle's so much better now. Can we just get rid of all this other stuff?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, we'll leave the accident in, sure." So it was basically a total accident that we came up with a better way to message it to players, and we just got rid of the old gift of true sight because it didn't always work clean. It wasn't always easy to tell. But this way, everyone in the raid had an opportunity to say like, "That's the person." You weren't sitting there going, "Who's got the gift of true sight? Byron, Bobby."
Oh, sorry,
Anybody?
okay, what's going on?
Yeah, and then,
Yeah,
It's making a taco.
yeah.
went to get a snack. Sorry, no big deal. All right. June Veronica. I love this person's name because I have no question about how to say it. Why is the alternate platform at Demos technically above us when it looks so much like a cave or something underground? Yeah, you guys, why?
That directly came from feedback from the testers. They wanted to be able to put down the raid markers and have like a visual reference like directly on the raid map, because the chains in the normal realm where Saul is directly correspond to the chains above him in the demon realm. So this way what you could do is go in, place down all your raid markers, and then you would know, and because like the chain above, when you kill it, it turns off the chain down below, so you always have like a direct they always correspond with each other. So like when you go back up, you'd be like, "Hey, we're going on X chain next," and people like players would have less time, or it would be easier for them once they got up there, because it is a little disorientating when you get up there, because your player facing is kind of randomized when you get up there. And this way you could be like, "Nope, I know that like doesn't matter which way I'm facing. I'm just going to point my camera towards north, and I'm going to go towards that because that's where the X marker is, and that's the one we want to kill next."
Yeah.
It was just to make it easier for players to mark them.
Okay. All right, I'm going to do one more question because we have been here for an hour and a half, and you guys just had a lot of good stuff to say. It's not like, "Well, you wasted my time." This was awesome. If you can't think of anything, that's fine, because I know it's been a while, but what was the most bizarre thing that occurred during development of this raid wing, if you can remember?
So Samurag has a bunch of he knocks players back, or she
Yes.
knocks players back. I'm going to use she. So I'm going to use my headcanon.
All right, your
She has
headcanon.
not a lot of knockbacks that use a very specific style of knockback that we haven't used in encounters before, which is called launched point.
Okay.
Whereas we have like knockbacks, knockdowns, pulls, and blowouts and stuff like that. This is actually, there's like a lot of vector calculus math involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a point in time where I was using an improper, I was converting numbers incorrectly from integers to nums and back to integers in some of our skill scripting.
Oh, no.
And I was accidentally trying to launch you to the 000 point of the world.
Oh, no.
Which was essentially like, let's say that this is the platform. 000 is like that way 1,000 miles,
Right.
like in the sky. And so there was a point in time where like any time I got hit by any knockback while I was testing it, I was just flung out of the
Into the
encounter
stratosphere.
entirely, and then just like immediately killed, because I either die on impact or I'd fall into the collision of the surrounding area and die to impact. And so like there was a moment where I was just like, I think I messed up. I think I need to start over with this. And it just turned out to be like improper like ordering of some math
Yeah.
and operations. But that was, and you like there is still some point like in the center of his of her like double slam during the audio attack chain. That if you stand just right, you can get launched straight up in the air, but not too far, just enough that you don't die.
Everybody
You
is, so many people are rushing to find that right now.
I hope so. It's fun. That one's actually probably one of the safest places to be. If you
It's
actually,
in the middle
if you
of the
have to
attack.
get hit by
Yeah.
it, you should do it there. It's also hard to pinpoint. So
Okay,
good
so
luck.
it's just like one tiny spot
Yeah.
somewhere.
It's always changing.
Oh, really?
Because it's based on orientation of the bosses facing. So like, good luck.
Good luck.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Any others? Because I don't know how much weirder than that. That's amazing. Just this super hard hit that flings you into space.
Into space accidentally.
I
And
love
totally
it.
Not on purpose.
I like it. All right. Well, then let's call it good because
Yeah.
that's a really perfectly weird ending. So, thank you guys for sticking with us for so long. That was a lot, but it was a lot of really good stuff. So I appreciate all of the time that you guys gave, and thank you guys for sticking with us and watching us. Make sure you follow our channel so you don't miss all of the things that we have coming up, and we will see you on the next Guild Chat. Bye.